Hello everyone and welcome back to where we sometimes talk about thrillers on Thursdays, and maybe this isn't obvious to you all, but it is to me. The background's gonna look a little bit more boring because some things are missing off the walls. Can you guess why? It's a tale as old as time. If you've been watching my channel for years, for the, fifth, sixth consecutive year in a row, I am unfortunately moving. Emphasis on unfortunately because I do not want to in this case. Like many of you, I'm sure you're dealing with the same thing. I got a really cheap rate on this apartment for COVID. When my lease was coming up, they told me that unfortunately my apartment has been selected to be renovated, and so I'm being forced to vacate when the lease ends. I didn't get a ton of notice, so I'm moving essentially into the exact same unit 2 floors up. Of course, much more expensive with COVID rates being gone, but I unfortunately just didn't have time to find another apartment. But anyway, you all don't need to hear every detail, but that is why, for example, the creepy candles are missing off the walls. But today is gonna be a little bit of a wrap up, and originally I was just gonna talk about the books that I've read recently, but instead there's some TV shows and movies I've seen recently I also really wanted to talk about, and I thought I would all just mash it into one video. Some of these are gonna be thrillers and horror, some of them won't be. I also think this might be something I do regularly since I am a big just pop culture TV show and movie addict as well. So if you can think of a catchy title to call this series where I'm talking about everything at once, please feel free to let me know. I will talk about books, then TV shows and movies, and I will have everything listed down below that I'm going to be reviewing. So first, let's start off with the books. And as you all know, I am a Karin Slaughter super fan, and they very kindly sent me False Witness. Where is it? Here we go. False Witness for review. Pretty Girls and The Good Daughter are 2 of my favorite thrillers of all time. And I'm also, as a sidebar, I really need to film an updated favorite thrillers video. And since this is her newest standalone novel, I was really looking forward to this. Again, these are gonna be quick, rapid fire reviews, but this is told from the point of view of 2 sisters, Lee, who is a successful lawyer in Atlanta, and Callie, who is unfortunately dealing with a lot of addiction issues. And this is not spoiling anything, it happens right at the beginning of the book, but when they are younger, they're both babysitters for this little boy. The dad is very abusive, and they end up the dad, and they cover it up very effectively. And then later on, years later, which is when the start of the book kicks off, present day, Lee walks in to see her newest client, who has been accused of some pretty horrible atrocities, and surprise, surprise, it is the little boy they used to babysit all grown up. So there's really a situation where their past comes back to haunt them. And again, I was so looking forward to this because I love Karin Slaughter so much. Starting off with the pros, although Karin Slaughter's books are in general really disturbing, horribly graphic. This says just trigger warnings for every single thing you could think of. There is still, and I think this is the case for a lot of her books, and especially this one, there's still a lot of heart to it, to the point where I was really tearing up and almost crying at some pieces. Oh, and as always, I thought the writing was very solid. I do have to say I did not enjoy this as much as some of her other standalone novels. For some reason, the pacing of this and the setting felt really stilted. I don't know how to describe it. There just didn't seem to feel to be a lot of movement to the book. It wasn't like her past books where I was really feeling the need to fly through this. And the other thing, and I'll keep this short because I might want to do a whole separate video on this, I of course still love horror. I love thrillers, and that's what this channel is still going to be focused on. But something about some of the scenes in this book really unsettled my stomach. I know that they're supposed to, but the subject matter of this book specifically really got under my skin to the point where I was kind of skipping through and not wanting to look at certain sections. That might be something I do a separate video on. Maybe it's just changes in my mindset from, when I was younger. I don't know, but I don't even want to say some of the stuff that it was about, and I just thought some scenes were a little bit too much detail is all I'll say. But in the end, I will give False Witness by Karin Slaughter 3.5 out of 5 creepy candles. Then we have a little bit of a different type of book for me to read, and that is a nonfiction novel called Bad Blood. This was hugely popular a few years back whenever it came out, and so I'm a little bit late to this, but oh my god, I flew through this. I thought this was riveting. It made me want to read nonfiction more often. And I guess backing up, this is of course about Elizabeth Holmes, which I'm sure you all know who she is, so I won't give a summary of this book, but this is written by the man who wrote the Wall Street Journal article that sort of opened the floodgates and exposed everything. And the reason I wanted to read this is because I started watching The Dropout, and while I really liked it, I wanted to know more. I wanted to know all the details. So I picked this up from the library. And again, I'm just gonna skip to the end and say how many creepy candles I gave this. So I gave it 5 out of 5. This was a new, just really surprise favorite for me. And if any of you have read this and you loved it also as well, please feel free to let me know. I know this is very broad. Nonfiction is a huge genre. Any others you think I should read? Because this was riveting and I really can't think of many bad things to say about this. Then as a book I was really looking forward to, this is a very anticipated read for me, and that is Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I of course loved Mexican Gothic. Was that my favorite book of, it was in my top 5 favorite books. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but that of course, Mexican Gothic was right up my alley, you know, kind of Victorian, disturbing, weird horror. This is very different, and I did know that going into it. This is sort of a historical crime noir set in the 1970s in Mexico. This is told from 2 point of views, Maite and Elvis. Maite is a secretary who's obsessed with these sort of tawdry comic books. She's not very happy with her life, and it's also told from the point of view of Elvis, who's involved in a lot of crime. And Maite is asked by her neighbor Leonora to watch her cat, and then soon after asking to watch the cat, Leonora disappears, and so it's dealing with trying to figure out what happened to her, and Maite getting involved with a lot of different groups. I do really enjoy crime novels, so although this isn't horror in the same way Mexican Gothic was, this isn't the type of plot that wouldn't be up my alley, but I will say I did not love it as much as Mexican Gothic. I just personally did not find the plot that gripping, and I think for me the main reason was there wasn't a lot of tension because I did not care about Leonora at all. And I know you're not necessarily supposed to. She's not a likable character, and most of these characters are pretty gray and unlikable. That's not what I disliked, but because I didn't care about any of the characters, when there would be what I think were supposed to be very tense scenes with fights, I didn't care if anyone died. That's really what it comes down to. I just didn't feel the tension that I think the author wanted me to. But I will say a couple things that I really enjoyed. I liked that Maite was unlikable in a very everyday way. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you read books like this, the narrator, especially if it's a female protagonist, is unlikable, but it's just because, you know, she's making witty, sarcastic remarks. She's kind of rude. She's a detective who has a hard life, right? That's unlikable. Maite is just a very average person who's pretty unlikable and just normal. I feel like I've met Maite many times, and I kind of liked that. I thought it was really refreshing that she was just kind of a normal, slightly not great person. And I will say there's sort of a little bit of romance throughout the book, and I will just say, without any spoilers, I liked how that sort of wrapped up by the end of the book. I thought that was kind of refreshing. But in the end, I will give Velvet Was the Night 3.5 out of 5 creepy candles. Okay, now let's get into a couple TV shows that I want to talk about quickly, and this is one of my new favorites of all time, and that is Severance on Apple TV. This is a perfect time if you don't have Apple TV to just do a free trial, because this has wrapped up so you can watch all 9 episodes now. This follows 4 characters who, in sort of our universe, but very surreal, they have decided to be severed, which means when they are at work, they cannot remember their personal life, and when they are home, they cannot remember their work life. And it really kicks off when Helly wakes up as her severed self at work, and of course has no memory and is very unhappy that she's in this situation. This has, again, no spoilers of course, but this has one of the best finales I have ever seen. So exciting and gripping, and it is a big cliffhanger, but I cannot wait for season 2. I've just been nonstop recommending this to everyone, all my friends and family, and they're probably getting really annoyed by this point, but again, if you haven't seen this yet, please go watch it. Next is a TV show that's on right now, and I wasn't even sure to include this because it is really popular, and it's also not horror or a thriller, so I didn't know if it made sense for me to, but I love it so much that I just wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about it, and that is Atlanta, which is on FX, or I watch it on Hulu. And we'll get into what it's about because I'm sure, you know, Atlanta's incredibly popular, but we've been waiting on season 3 for a long time, and if for some reason you haven't watched it, I think now is a great time to get caught up in season 1 and 2 and dive into season 3. This is one of the very few shows where even though, 5 episodes are out, I already want to go back and start rewatching them. The writing is so incredibly clever. Each episode feels like a time capsule, and my expectations, and I think everybody who saw season 1 and 2 were really, really high, and somehow it's still surpassing it. I love that it feels really different than season 1 and 2. I love the setting in Europe and dealing with racism and class in Europe versus the US. And I think the reason I love, and I'm realizing now, Atlanta and Severance so much is because they are creepy, right? If you've seen the season 2 episode, Teddy Perkins of Atlanta, terrifying. They're creepy, they're funny, and they take place in our world, but very, very surreal. And those 3 things I'm realizing are my favorite things for a TV show. Now I wanted to talk about 2 movies, and this first one I'm gonna fly through because there have been so many glowing reviews. There's nothing else that's novel or new that I could say about it, but of course, as everybody's been saying, Everything Everywhere All at Once is incredible. I'd seen so many positive reviews. So I wouldn't say it surpassed my expectations, but that's because my expectations were already really, really high. And I would say that this is one, unlike the next one I'm gonna talk about, that I do think is worth going in theaters. Even though we had someone next to us who was laughing just too much, so loud. This is a funny movie, but there were just scenes that are not funny that it was distracting. But anyway, other than that, I really do think it's a worthwhile experience when people are laughing in the theater, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say this, if you've seen it, when there are moments of silence. I think it's really cool to watch that and kind of feel that as the audience member. But again, there's nothing new or novel I can say about this, but please, please go watch. And the next one I wanted to mention, because although it's not in theaters anymore, I'm assuming it's coming to streaming soon. So I wanted to put my thoughts out on it. And if you're part of the horror community, I had to pause filming and now I'm sweating. So Chris, thanks for calling right in the middle of filming. But anyway, I went to see X, a few weeks ago when it came out. And if you're a horror fan, we were all really, really looking forward to this. But this is kind of a 1970s throwback film about, I'm going to use certain language so this video does not get flagged, but it's about a bunch of people who are filming a corn film, and they rent a little house behind an old couple's house kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and chaos starts to ensue. This was, I have to say, the surprise highlight of this entire movie for me was Brittany Snow. She was my favorite character. I loved her so much, and it was really nice to see her in a really good movie in a very different role than what she's done in the past. This is a blend of, of course it's a horror movie, but it also has a lot of heart to it. I loved every single character, and I loved all the women especially, but in general, everyone was super, super likable, even though you didn't get tons of backstory on everyone. It also had a lot of moments of humor that I thought were super funny, and it was just a really enjoyable experience. I will say, I saw some reviews before I went into seeing this that people saying this is going to be a new horror classic. It's going to be now one of the top 10 best horror movies of all time. The bar for some of these reviews I was saying was really, really high. And I will say it's an excellent movie. I don't really have many negatives to say about it, but I will say I disagree that this is one of the best horror movies of the past, say, for example, 5-10 years. And I know that I hate saying this in horror reviews because it's so subjective, but I don't think it's creepy or scary enough for it to rise to that level of making it, say, that memorable, right? I love movies like Ready or Not that are a really, really fun blend of horror and comedy. X is not to that level. It's not trying to be as funny as, say, that movie, but it's also not as scary as, say, Hereditary, or as eerie and strange as It Follows. So it was really fun to see. I probably would have preferred, though, to stream this, just because if I'm gonna pay that money to be in a theater, I want it to be because it's a very memorable experience and I'm gonna be thinking about the movie for days or weeks afterwards. I haven't really thought about X that much until I sat down to film this review and I realized, oh wait, I should talk about this new big horror movie. So again, so much fun. I do highly, highly recommend watching it when it starts streaming, but it's not, say, one of my favorite new horror movies of all time. Because again, the creepiest, scariest parts of the movie were when the old people were naked. And I don't think that's a spoiler, but so I hope you all enjoyed this video. I know if you have any ideas for what to call this series, because I think I kind of want to keep doing this, and please let me know if you've read or watched any of these and if you agreed or disagreed with any of my thoughts. So again, hope you all are doing well and staying safe, and I'll see you in the next one.